Sirui 35mm f1.8 Anamorphic lens. I shot an entire little short with this lens, put it out on the channel last week. Let's play that again quickly before we talk about this lens in a bit more detail. Oh, and today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. More on them in a bit.
One thing I've never had a problem with is running out of ideas. But my ideas don't come to me in the same way I'd assume most others receive theirs. I see shots first. I can picture a scene in my head long before I know the story surrounding it. I know where I want to shoot. I know the lighting, the sound design, the look, the feel. I'll often go into a video having already picked the music, long before anything else. But finding a story is where I constantly struggle. Throwing together cinematic shots on their own looks good, but it has no meaning. Everything revolves around a story. A reason for a shot being there. What is its purpose? How does it drive a narrative? In my head, my idea looks great. But to everyone else, they have no idea what they're looking at without a story. It just becomes a meaningless sea of shots with no context. Your B-roll is only B-roll if you have A-roll. Your A-roll is your story. But in hindsight, maybe the story is just the journey.
So the whole concept of that little short really was just to showcase what is possible with this lens, a bunch of different shots. And as you can probably tell, I didn't really have a story to tie it all together, so that's why I went the route that I did. Just showing the shots, and the story was that I didn't have a story to tie it all together. So hopefully that made sense. It didn't come out exactly how I wanted it to come out. It's really hard to shoot on your own. There was a bunch more shots that I wanted to get. But needless to say, it wasn't too bad in the end. So the Sirui 35mm f1.8 is an anamorphic lens. Typically anamorphic lenses cost substantially more than what this does. But what Sirui is doing is making a much more budget-friendly option that allows a lot more people to get their hands on them. This is on Indiegogo right now. I believe it's $5.99 US or 800 Canadian if you get in early. You know, with Indiegogo, the later you wait, the more you pay basically. So if you want this, I would recommend get it now while it's cheaper. When the lens arrived, it actually came as a micro 4/3 mount. I'm not sure how it will finally ship, but they just sent me an adapter and that just clips over the front there, 4 screws, and it goes from being micro 4/3 to an EMOUNT lens, which you can now use on any APS-C or Sony full frame camera. 35mm, once it's stretched out on APS-C, is the equivalent of 26.3, which on a full frame is 39.45. Now, I much prefer this field of view, how much wider it is. I shot everything on the A7 III in crop mode, and just the big wider scenes look so much better. They're so much more cinematic, just my preference. It's obviously a manual focus lens, with the manual focus ring being on the front right here. Now you see that I've got these little gears attached, and they come with the lens, and you just slide them on. What these are for are to be able to use like a focus motor if you're on a gimbal and you want to pull focus. I just added them on because it just gives them a little bit more grip and it makes them easier to turn. The manual focus ring at the front here is firm, but it's very, very smooth throughout all the way around, and I really do like how it feels. Sometimes with lenses, you never know what you're going to get. They did a really great job with the manual focus on this. And then the aperture ring is at the back here, and it is declicked, meaning that there is no click when you want to turn it, which is normally what you get when it comes to a manual focus video-centric lens. The lens is made entirely of metal and it has a solid, hefty weight to it. I associate weight of a lens with quality. This feels like a very solid piece of glass. When you pick it up, it feels a lot heavier than you think it does just by looking at it. So let's talk about the best way to get those nice big blue cinematic flares that everyone wants to get. Let's talk about how you edit the video, and when it comes to filming, a couple of tips as well. But before that, a quick word from today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative people like you and I. And with a premium membership, there's no ads. Everything is available when you are or when you have the free time to just jump on and take a class. Now I know we talk a lot about gear and sometimes more advanced topics, but I also know there are people that come to this channel who are new to the video world. They're just getting into it and they're often confused by the huge amount that there is to learn. Now, if that's you, I did find a great class on Skillshare by a fellow YouTube creator called Simon Cade. Simon has nearly 900,000 subscribers on his channel, DSLR Video Guide, and is a wealth of information. In his course, Filmmaking on a Budget, he literally covers everything from frame rates to apertures, ISO, focal lengths, and often things I take for granted that I've learned that can be tricky to learn, like basic camera work and camera movement. I highly recommend it if you're just getting started or even if you're looking for a refresher on topics you're not overly confident with. I'll pop a link down below to the class if you're interested, and if you're not already on Skillshare, an annual subscription does work out to be less than $10 a month. And if you're one of the first 1,000 to click the link down below, you will get a 2-month free trial of premium Skillshare membership. Anamorphic lenses are very well known for having that big blue anamorphic flare that goes across the screen, the J.J. Abrams-esque look. And to be able to do that, you're going to need to make sure that the lens is level with the light that you're trying to get the flare from. So in my previous video, people were commenting saying they couldn't get the same look, they couldn't get the same flares, and that's probably because of the angle of the light. So let's say this is a car headlight here and you're shooting down, you're really not going to get the headlight there. You need to be head on with whichever light source you want to get the flare from. So in all the shots you saw in the video that I put out last week, the light for the most part was level with the lens. So if you're shooting something that's low, like on my one wheel, you need to make sure the lens is low. So that's the biggest tip I can give you. Make sure the lens is facing directly into the light source that you want to get the flare from. When it comes to editing the video, don't overthink it. You need to do a custom project size for the video, which is that right there. When it comes to actually stretching or de-stretching out the video, add an adjustment layer to your timeline and just stretch the x-axis by 133%, and that will turn the video from being squished to stretched. It'll fill that custom resolution and it'll look nice and cinematic and all good and that stuff. When it comes to actually filming with the lens, as it is a manual focus lens, I'm gonna highly recommend that you use focus peaking just to make sure that things are properly focused. And if you have a monitor that has a de-stretch option in it as well, like the Ninja 5 does, like a lot of the field world monitors do, you want to use the 1.3x option. That'll de-stretch it properly so you can see it live as you're filming, and you can focus properly. It is possible to film and focus properly without a monitor. It's just a lot harder because things are really squished in there. So manual focus, you want to use focus peaking, you want to use a monitor and de-stretch by 1.3 times. In terms of all the shots that I shot there, most of that was actually static shots, and I just shot in 4K and then keyframed some zoom movements afterwards, just to give the shots a little bit more depth. Other shots were shot with the Ronin S, so there's spinning shots there, and then I shot a couple of things in the studio with the Moses slide pod just to give me some slider movement as well. So there we go, that is the Sirui 35mm f1.8. If you're looking at shooting something anamorphic, you want those flares, if you want this look, I don't think there's anything else on the market that you can get for this cost that will give you that look. So it's a really great budget-friendly option. I really do love what Sirui is doing. I'm excited to see what their next anamorphic lens will be. I'd really like something a little bit wider, maybe at 24. We'll see. All right, if you want this, there's a link down below. Appreciate you watching today. Take care, see you later.